When I found out my own brother had lifted the stash, I didn't scream. I didn't break a bottle over his head like some punk in an alley.
No.
I smiled, lit a cigarette, and let the smoke curl slow out of my mouth. That's the thing about betrayal. It tastes better when you let it settle on your tongue before you spit it back in their face. See, in our world, there are two kinds of thieves. The ones who steal from strangers and the ones stupid enough to steal from family. Guess which kind my brother Tony turned out to be. It was supposed to be clean. We'd knocked over a private poker game, cash stuffed in duffel bags, jewels sliding easy into our pockets. The kind of job that buys you respect in the city, the kind of score you split down the middle, no questions, no whining. But when I opened that bag later and saw it light by 50 grand, I knew. Tony's fingerprints were all over it. He had sticky hands and a slick smile, always did. I didn't confront him right away. No, I wanted to see how far he'd go. When he swaggered into Ma's house 2 nights later, flashing that new watch like he'd earned it with sweat and bullets, I almost laughed in his face. But I kept my cool, nursing a whiskey, watching his wife Gina play hostess in her silk dress. She leaned in close when she poured my drink, that gold necklace hanging low on her collarbone, catching every bit of light in the room. That necklace wasn't hers a week ago. I'd seen it in the pile we took. Diamond-studded chain, custom clasp, belonged to a guy who doesn't forgive debts. I remembered holding it in my hand before it vanished with the rest of my share. Tony didn't even have the brains to hide it. He hung it on his wife like a trophy, parading her around the living room while I sat there swallowing rage with every sip. Family dinner turned into a circus. Tony laughed louder than he needed to, slapped me on the back too hard, called me kid brother like I was some fool fresh off the block. Gina kept touching that necklace, twisting it between her fingers like she knew what she was doing, like she was in on it. Maybe she was. I didn't say a word. Not that night. But inside, the gears started grinding. You don't steal from me and walk around draped in my cut like it's a joke. You don't turn me into a clown at my own table. Later, when I stepped outside for air, I watched their window glow from across the street. Their silhouettes moved inside, his broad shoulders, her delicate frame with that necklace glinting at her throat. And that's when I decided. If Tony thought he could take what's mine, I'd take something that burned him worse than cash. I didn't want his blood. Not yet. Blood dries, but humiliation sticks. I wanted him to feel the sting every time he looked at his wife's neck and saw it bare. That necklace was gonna be mine again, but not just for the money. For the message. The city streets smelled like gasoline and rain when I lit another smoke and started planning. Tony thought he'd outplayed me. He didn't know the game hadn't even started. Because I wasn't just gonna steal back what was mine. I was gonna make sure he knew I'd been in his house, close enough to breathe his air, close enough to touch what he thought was safe. And when he realized it, oh, the look on his face would be worth more than the necklace itself. That was the first night I pictured it. Gina asleep, necklace dangling just inches away. My hand reaching for it, slow and steady. And Tony, waking up the next morning, finding nothing but skin where his prize used to hang.
Yeah.
That was the night the plan was born. I watched their life from the streetlight like some stray dog watching a fat couple eating scraps through a cracked window. I learned patterns the way others learn prayers. What time Gina locked the door, when Tony left for his late shift at the garage, which cigarette brand he preferred when he was thinking. You make time your ally when you play long. Impatience gets you caught, and quick hands without thought make stupid mistakes. I'd seen Tony make those mistakes his whole life. He liked the fireworks, the loud exits. That's his weakness. Spectacle. Mine's patience. First, I needed a way in. Tony and Gina weren't stupid, just loud. They kept the house tidy, the windows curtained, the alarm blinking like a neon sermon. But every fortress has its seams. Gina kept a spare at the back garden shed, under a cracked flower pot. Of course she did. Whoever hangs a necklace bigger than their head doesn't trust locks, they trust convenience. So I timed it. Tuesday night, rain coming. People are gullible under bad weather. Less attention, fewer witnesses. I slid through the alley like I'd been there 1,000 times, though I'd only walked that route twice in my life. Once when we scoped the house for a safe job, second when I wanted to see Gina in that dress again. The shed was half-rotted, the pot cracked off kilter, and inside was a key with Gina's initials stamped on it. I almost laughed. They made it that easy. Inside the house felt foreign and familiar all at once. Familiar because it was where I spent half my childhood, sprawled on their sofa, watching some boxing match while Tony argued about money he didn't have. Foreign because now it smelled like perfume and detergent, a smell that said clean hands, clean lies. I crept through shadows like a thought. Old photos stared at me from the walls, the brothers smiling in some summer fog, not knowing what we'd be later. I touched one frame for a second, because ghosts like small mercies. The necklace was in their bedroom. I'd seen it before in the bag, raw and attention-seeking. Now it lay on Gina's dresser, on a velvet pad, like a god waiting to be worshipped. It glittered the way a threat does when you hold it in daylight, cold, precise, and beautiful. My hand wanted it then, closer than the memory of it in the bag, closer than the thought of Tony's smug face. But I moved slow. Haste is the enemy. I worked like a surgeon. The alarm panel was old. I'd nicked a bypass code years back from a kid who used to sell knockoffs on the corner. It still worked in this neighborhood because people spent money on wine and not on updating their systems. One soft press, 2 wires bridged, soft beep, and the LED went blank like I'd turned off a pulse. Silence is a luxury. I took it. Gina slept like a queen who'd never known thievery. The moon carved a silver path across her sheets. Her hair was a dark waterfall, the necklace curved under her collar like a snake. I could have slipped it on my wrist then, just to feel its weight, but this wasn't about greed for me. Retribution tastes better with presentation. I wanted Tony to know the moment it left his life. How, when, and by whom. That meant leaving more than a missing chain. It meant leaving a signature. I pocketed the necklace under my jacket and didn't race for the door. Instead, I took my time walking the house, touching small things, the brass lamp Tony had bragged about, the club chair with a cigarette burn he swore was from when the boys came over. I unpacked their life in my head, where Tony kept spare cash, bad spot, under the loose floorboard, amateur, where Gina stashed love letters, in the cookbook, page 213, the backdoor squeak, it needed WD-40, I oiled it and swore I'd remember the rhythm. I left no traces because I knew what leaving traces did. It let people imagine you clumsy and wild. I wanted them quiet, precise, and certain. On the way out, I left a little thing I knew would hurt Tony more than the loss itself. I placed a single pawn from an old chess set on his mantel, the one he'd laughed at when we were kids because he said playing chess was for pussies. It was a small, ridiculous thing. But symbolism is a blade if you sharpen it right. Pawn to the proud, I thought. You always underestimated the slow ones. I melted into the night with the necklace warm against my ribs. The city swallowed me and the rain hid my footsteps. The adrenaline did funny things. My hands shook just a touch, not from the steel but anticipating the look on Tony's face when he woke and found his trophy gone. That image kept me walking faster. I didn't go home. There's a kind of cowardice in sleeping in your own bed right after you cross a line. So I rode the bus until the city bled into dawn, and in a motel off 3rd I laid the chain on the cheap table and looked at it until the sun cupped my face. Money was small now. The weight in my coat meant different things. I unhooked the clasp and ran my thumb along the diamonds. They were fine. They hadn't been switched, no double. Whoever sold parts in the back streets would be disappointed. This was real. This was hot. I called a friend, Mick, a guy who buys things and asks no questions, and told him to meet me at the old diner in an hour. I didn't want the necklace fenced right away. The plan needed layers. Mick knew people, buyers who loved drama, men who'd pay more if the story came with a face. Stories sell things like fresh bread. I wanted Tony to hear the rumor before anyone else did. While I waited, a thought crept up like a bad landlord. Gina. She'd been wearing that necklace like armor. What would the loss do to her? We steal for reasons, survival, greed, or a point we need to make. My point had been made in my head already, but life isn't a film where every shot lines up neatly. Gina had a laugh that used to echo across the block. I wasn't heartless, it's just that some hearts are heavy enough to be useful when they harden. Mick showed up with 2 cigarettes and a grin. He looked at the necklace and whistled low. "Nice," he said. "Tony's gonna lose his mind." I didn't smile. I folded the chain into a small velvet pouch and handed it to him. "Hold it," I said. "Tell no one. But whisper to the right ears. Make sure Gino hears about it by tonight." Gino was Tony's cousin, a man who liked to keep family honor tidy with knuckles and threats. I wanted Gino to twitch before Tony knew. Make the rumor move like a live thing. That night, the city did exactly what I wanted. Gino heard, posted up in his bar like he owned the block. Tony's grin dissolved into a mouth full of knives. He came looking, loud and angry, and Gina's face went pale as an old sheet. When Tony found me 3 nights later at the corner where the light stings you, he didn't look at me like a brother. He looked like a man who'd been fished out of water and found missing his gills. "You took it," he said, spit and accusation. "You took what was mine." "No," I replied, even and slow. "You took what was ours. You made your choice." His hand reached for me, quick, stupid, and Gino's shadow moved before Tony's. I let him feel it. He doesn't get to hit me and keep his pieces. Not tonight. Not after parading my cut around his house like it was a trophy. Tony swore, threats bending his voice. "You'll pay for this. You don't touch family." Family. The word landed different when he said it. For him, family was a lever. For me, family was bone. He'd broken it. He'd made the choice to steal from his own blood. So I smiled and walked away, letting the city hum and the rain wash the scene clean, and letting him stew in what he'd done. But I didn't stop there. I had plans that tasted even sweeter than watching him rage. Because taking the necklace back was only round 1. Tony needed a lesson that stuck. And Gina had the softest spot for being seen. She'd hate the thought of strangers whispering about her missing jewels, of her pride exposed. I was about to make sure every eye in the room saw the joke was on her. That's when the message hit my phone. A photo of Gina at some charity gala, neck bare, eyes rimmed with mascara, text overlay, "Where's the necklace?" The sender was anonymous, but the timing was perfect. Someone was already talking. Someone was listening. I grinned, and the city laughed back. Tony wasn't the type to lick his wounds in private. He needed an audience, always had. So when I heard he'd stormed into Gino's bar the next night, chest puffed out, swearing he'd track me down and bury me in concrete, I knew the act wasn't for Gino, it was for everyone else watching. That's Tony's way. If people see him weak, they stop fearing him. And fear, in this city, is the only currency that doesn't devalue overnight. But underneath all that shouting, I could smell the panic. He'd stolen my share of the loot, pawned part of it off as gifts for his wife, and now the crown jewel, the necklace, was gone from his house without a trace. His reputation wasn't just cracked. It was bleeding. Word on the street spreads faster than rot. By Thursday, dealers, gamblers, even the corner boys were whispering that Tony couldn't keep his own house in order. "If his own brother can take from him," I overheard one of them say, "what chance does Tony got against the real sharks?" That's when I knew my plan was working. I didn't need bullets. I just needed patience. See, I wasn't in this for money anymore. I was in it for leverage. A man with a broken reputation is easier to move than a pawn on a board. And Tony was already sliding. I kept the necklace hidden, not fenced, not sold. The smart move would have been cashing it out before the trail went cold. But I wanted him to know it wasn't gone, it was close. Every night, I'd take it out, let it dangle in the low light of my motel room, and imagine the look on Gina's face when she realized someone had been inches from her while she slept. That necklace wasn't jewelry anymore. It was a message carved in diamonds. I was here. I own you. Friday night, I made my next move. I left an envelope at their doorstep, taped clean to the front door. Inside was a photo, Gina sleeping with the necklace on her chest, the moonlight catching it like silver fire. I'd taken it the night I crept into their bedroom, just before pocketing the chain. I left no note, no threat. Just the photo. Sometimes silence screams louder than words. By Saturday, Tony was unraveling. I heard from Mick that he'd been asking around for hitters, guys who'd break bones for cash, no questions asked. Problem was, when you're desperate, you attract scavengers. And scavengers don't stay loyal long. He was digging himself into a pit, and I was handing him the shovel. Then came Gina. She called me. How she got my number, I'll never know. Maybe Tony left his phone unlocked. Maybe she remembered from years back when we were all still playing at being family. Her voice was low, nervous, carrying that shake of someone who's been staring at shadows too long. "Why'd you do it?" she asked. Not angry. Not accusing. Just tired. "Why'd I do what?" I said, playing dumb, though we both knew the answer. "The necklace," she whispered. "You could have taken the money. You could have come after Tony. But you came after me." I leaned back, letting the smoke from my cigarette curl toward the ceiling. "No, Gina. I came after him. You were just wearing the proof." Silence stretched. I could almost hear her breathing, quick and shallow. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You don't understand. That necklace, it wasn't just for me. Tony gave it to me because he knew I'd wear it everywhere. He wanted people to see it. He wanted people to know he could give me things other men couldn't. Without it, he's nothing." I smiled into the dark. That was exactly the point. "Then you better get used to seeing him sweat," I told her and hung up. By Sunday, Tony was half crazy. He'd kicked in Gino's office door, demanding help. Gino, cool as ice, told him straight, "If you can't control your brother, how you gonna control a crew?" That line hit harder than any fist. Respect was slipping through his fingers like water, and every whisper in the city was turning that slip into a flood. That night, I decided to turn the screws tighter. I took the necklace, wrapped it in plain brown paper, and mailed it, not to Tony, not to Gina, but to the one man Tony feared more than anyone, Salvatore Costa. Old school boss. The kind of man who didn't waste bullets on lessons. He taught with disappearances. I didn't send the whole thing, though. Just the clasp, still etched with the jeweler's mark. Enough for Salvatore to recognize it. Enough for him to ask Tony uncomfortable questions. When the package left my hands at the post office, I felt a calm settle over me. Tony thought this was just between brothers. He had no idea I'd invited the wolves to the table. And when Salvatore came sniffing, Tony would have two choices: admit he stole from family, or admit he lost control. Either way, his kingdom was crumbling. Me? I just sat back and lit another cigarette, watching the smoke curl like the future. Because the game wasn't about money anymore. It was about who'd still be standing when the smoke cleared. And I had no intention of falling. Salvatore didn't waste time. He never did. By Tuesday, word came down the street that Tony had been invited to dinner at Costa's place. And when Salvatore invited you, you didn't check your calendar. You checked your pulse. I knew the clasp had landed exactly where I wanted it to. Salvatore was old school, the kind of man who'd slit a throat with the same ease he'd slice bread. He valued loyalty more than gold, and if you crossed him, you didn't just vanish, you were erased. That's what made mailing him that little piece of metal so sweet. I didn't have to say a word. The clasp screamed louder than I ever could. Tony lost control. The meeting was quiet, private, behind the velvet curtains of his favorite restaurant. Only a few men at the table, no wives, no noise. But whispers leaked out. Tony sat stiff, sweat soaking his shirt while Salvatore rolled the clasp between his fingers, like a priest thumbing rosary beads. He didn't raise his voice, didn't curse. He just asked questions. Simple ones, the kind you couldn't dance around. Where is the rest? Why was it missing in the first place? Why does your brother's name keep surfacing in my city? Tony stumbled, lied, blamed me, then backtracked. It was pathetic. Every excuse made him smaller. And when a man shrinks in Salvatore's eyes, he never grows back. By midnight, I heard he'd been sent home alive. Which was worse than a bullet. Alive meant Salvatore wasn't done squeezing him yet. Alive meant the noose was tightening, inch by inch. I could have stopped there. Could have let the mob finish him off. But something in me wanted the pleasure of twisting the knife myself. Family betrayal deserves a personal touch. That's when Gina came back into play. She called again, this time from a burner. Her voice cracked like glass. "He's falling apart," she whispered. "Tony doesn't sleep. He keeps checking the windows, snapping at me, drinking himself stupid. What are you doing to him?" I let the silence hang until I could hear her breathing fast. "Teaching him," I finally said. Her voice hardened. "And me? You teaching me too? Because I didn't steal from you." No, I told her, calm and sharp. But you wore it. You flaunted it. You let him make a fool of me in my own bloodline. That makes you part of the lesson. She didn't answer right away. When she did, it was soft. You don't understand what it's like with him. That necklace wasn't just jewelry, it was a leash. He gives, I wear, the world believes. Without it, people start asking questions. They don't respect him. And when they don't respect him, I'm the one who pays the price. That stopped me cold. For the first time, I heard fear in her words that wasn't about losing diamonds, it was about losing skin. Then maybe you ought to start thinking about who you stand next to when the fire comes, I told her. Because it's already burning. 2 nights later, Tony made his move. I came back to the motel, door kicked open, drawers ripped apart, mattress sliced wide. He'd been there, searching for the necklace. He left a message, carved into the bathroom mirror with a blade. Brothers don't steal. Brothers die. Crude. Desperate. Exactly the kind of noise I expected from him. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the necklace was already long gone from that room. I'd stashed it in a safety deposit box under a fake name, where even the cops couldn't touch it without a warrant. When I stood there in that wrecked motel room, glass crunching under my boots, I realized something. Tony wasn't just panicking, he was cornered. And a cornered animal doesn't think, doesn't plan. It bites. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Meet me, Gina's voice said, low and urgent. Alone. Tomorrow night. The pier. For a moment, I thought it was a setup. Maybe Tony had finally convinced her to lure me out. Maybe Salvatore had decided he wanted to tie a bow on this whole mess himself. But something in her tone didn't fit. It wasn't a trap voice. It was a breaking one. So I said yes. Because if Gina was cracking, then Tony's whole empire was about to collapse from the inside. And I wanted front row seats. The night before the meeting, I sat with the necklace in my hands one last time. Its weight wasn't just gold and diamonds anymore. It was everything: betrayal, revenge, family, fire. The kind of trophy you don't sell because money can't buy what it represents. Tomorrow, Gina would either beg or betray. And Tony would bleed, one way or another. I stubbed out my cigarette, closed the box, and smiled into the dark. The endgame was coming. The pier was half dead that night. Just the creak of wood, the slap of water, and a crooked lamp sputtering like it had secrets of its own. I got there early, always do. Never walk into a meet blind, never trust shadows you didn't measure first. I smoked in the dark, watching seagulls circle the trash bins, waiting to see if Gina would show with company. She came alone. Or at least she looked it. A long coat, hair pinned back, eyes darting like every shadow wanted her name. She moved fast, heels clicking sharp against the boards until she reached me. "You brought it?" she asked, voice thin. I didn't answer right away. I just pulled the little velvet pouch from my coat and let it dangle between 2 fingers. The necklace inside gave off the faintest clink, a sound that made her eyes widen like she'd just seen God's teeth. Her lips parted. "Give it to me." I shook my head slow. "Not how this works. You don't get to wear my cut and smile in my face. This ain't about the chain, Gina. It's about Tony." Her jaw tightened. "Tony's losing it. He drinks, he screams, he's dangerous. If he doesn't get that necklace back, Salvatore will bury him. And if he buries Tony, he'll bury me too." I stepped closer, smoke curling between us. "So maybe you picked the wrong side." She flinched but didn't back away. For the first time, I saw something raw in her face. Not vanity, not defiance. Fear. Real fear. "What if I help you?" she whispered. "What if I tell you where he hides the rest of the money, the names of the men he owes? You keep the necklace. You take him down clean. Just leave me out of it." The offer was sweet on the surface, but I knew better. Sweetness covers poison. I studied her eyes, searching for Tony's reflection in them. But what I saw wasn't loyalty, it was survival. She was cornered just like him. And cornered people talk truths they never meant to share. "You already picked your side the moment you wore this thing around your neck," I told her, lifting the pouch higher. So now you're gonna help me whether you like it or not. That's when I heard the footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Tony burst out from the shadows, gun in hand, eyes wild. Of course it was a setup. Of course she'd called him. But what he didn't know was that I'd been expecting it since the moment she phoned me. "Drop it," he barked, gun leveled at my chest. "Give me the necklace, or I'll paint this pier with your blood." I laughed low, steady, because fear is gasoline to men like Tony. "You always did love the drama." He stepped closer, barrel shaking just a little. "You think you're smarter than me? You think you can embarrass me in front of Salvatore, in front of the whole damn city?" "You embarrassed yourself," I said, slow and sharp. "You stole from Blood. You paraded your greed like a crown. And now you're standing here with a gun you don't even have the guts to fire." His finger twitched on the trigger. Gina gasped. The pier groaned under our weight like it was listening for the end. Then I made my move. Not for the gun. Not for him. For her. I tossed the pouch at Gina's feet. The sound of the necklace hitting would made Tony's eyes snap down for half a second. That was all I needed. I lunged, grabbed his wrist, twisted. The shot cracked, echoed off the water, missed me by an inch. My elbow slammed into his jaw. He staggered, dropped the gun. We wrestled like animals, brothers bound by hate instead of blood. His fists were wild, sloppy. Mine were precise, born from patience and years of holding rage in my chest. I drove him back until his heels hit the edge of the pier. One more shove and he was staring down black water. "Do it," he spat, blood on his teeth. "You want me gone, do it." I held him there, teetering, the whole city balanced on my hands. Then I let him fall, not into the water, not yet. Onto the boards, gasping, broken but breathing. I picked up the necklace from where it lay, shining under the weak lamp. Gina was frozen, eyes wide, lips trembling. "This," I said, holding it up. "This was never about gold. It was about respect. And respect ain't something you steal. It's something you bleed for." I turned, walked into the dark, the necklace heavy in my pocket. Behind me, Tony groaned, Gina cried, and the ocean kept its secrets. By morning, the city would know Tony had failed. Salvatore would hear. The whispers would finish what my fists started. And me. I'd still be standing. Because in this game, you don't win by being the loudest. You win by being the last one left when the smoke clears. And I was never going to be the one who fell.